Mr. President, Senator Robert Rajman, you said you didn't come to talk untruths. So I would just like to ask you, when you regaled us with all of that P&M from 2001 to 2021, and you said we built this and we did that and so on. Were you a member of the P&M or were you a member of the PDP until 2017? You would like to clarify? No? So therefore, if you were not a member of the P&M, it would be incorrect to say we. Robert Rajman, you said you didn't come to talk untruths. So I would just like to ask you, when you regaled us with all of that P&M from 2001 to 2021, and you said we built this and we did that and so on. Were you a member of the P&M or were you a member of the PDP until 2017? You would like to clarify? No? So therefore, if you were not a member of the P&M, it would be incorrect to say we did this and we did that. You have to, when you come in the Senate, you have to be, it's not funny, you know, it's a very serious not behavior. You cannot put things on the record that are not true. You were not P&M, so you were not we, and you're not from Paris, France. And don't take advice from Senator Al-Rawi because you might have to pay $250,000 because he just lost everything. But we don't live rent-free. P&M does not live rent-free in our head. It lives 69 million rent right next to you, 500 million in contract. That's why they're in our head, you understand? Because we need that money to be shared amongst the people, especially of Tobago. 619 recusers lives in our head. That's not rent-free. That's billions of dollars. So the disrespect of Tobago by the P&M continues, and it continues here today. So this might seem like a simple motion, but we are here once again for the UNC government to correct the record and to treat Tobago as an equal partner with love and respect. So don't come here and cover people. I am a half Tobagonian. I don't get involved in Tobago thing too often, but when I hear disrespect and P&M talking about Tobago, it really boils my blood, because here it is that a UNC government and a minister sitting there, the Honorable Saddam Hussein, met with the Chief Secretary only last year, and right here, a wrong that has existed for decades has been corrected by this government, just like that. And we must understand where your 15-0 come from. All you buy that didn't come by mistake. You know it is to get 15-0, 15-0, 15 nada, 15 none. That is a serious thing.
46-1, please, relevance.
All right, I'll give him the opportunity to develop his points. Continue.
Oh my goodness. You're learning from the wrong set of people. The relevance is respect due to Tobago. P&M, fire, burn P&M. Tobago don't want to hear from P&M. The way all they talk, all that project you do, and you get 15-0, like nobody lives there in all them house. The Land Acquisition Order 2025, Cove Estate. Pursuant to Section 5 of the Land Acquisition Act, Chapter 5801, the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is empowered to, by order, declare that any land is required for the public purposes. There is a procedure to be followed in order for the government of Trinidad and Tobago to formally acquire the land as set out in Sections 3, 4, and 5. And Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, I don't normally take my time and read out things, but this is so critical because Trinidad and Tobago, we have had a history of P&M's dominance, P&M's refusal to accept Tobagonians as equals. They had people sitting down as members of parliament for Tobago, but fighting the P&M position rather than fighting the Tobago position. And this must end. We must stand side by side, and Kamala Persad-Bissessar says that is how she will govern. On the 28th of January 2020, the then Minister of Finance, the Honorable Colm Imber, revealed a 2-year project to expand the A&R Robinson International Airport. However, this meant that persons who were living on the perimeter of the airport would have had to be relocated, and we might want to rush this motion, But no, these people suffered. House and land, these are human beings. Their children studying for exams. They were unceremoniously kicked out, disrespected, and could not get their money. So all you take all your time and listen. The half Tobagonian talking today, Mr. President. And these people deserve this to be on the record, because the PNM likes to push their head in the sand under Pigeon Point and pretend like they love people. It's the most disrespectful government in the history of the Caribbean. This meant that persons who were living on the perimeter of the airport would have had to be relocated, since that land would have been required for the expansion. A 2-year contract was then signed by representatives of the National Infrastructure Development Company, NIDCO, and the contracting company for the expansion, China Railway Construction. It's ironic that there was another Chinese company who got some HDC contract that the PNM then had to rescind because it was the most corrupt contract in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, with excesses and advance payments of 30% mobilization fee, $500 million overpriced, and they had to withdraw it and rescind it, when none other than the then former Prime Minister was the acting Minister of Housing, but then said he didn't know how the cabinet note reached to the cabinet, when only the minister who is in charge could sign the red file for the cabinet note to reach. But that's the PNM, that's the pathology of the PNM, and it's been unmasked. In January 2023, Minister Imbert stated that some $237.79 million was paid out by the then government to residents whose lands had been acquired to facilitate the construction of the new airport terminal and associated works at the ANR Robinson International Airport. NIDCO, being the executing body of the project, published a video in 2019 which outlined the procedure of acquiring the land surrounding the airport. The video stated the following order of events. You see, they put it on the record. They put dishonesty on the record, and we have to correct it. The then president of Trinidad and Tobago published a legal notice in the Gazette of the land required for the expansion of the airport in March 2019, pursuant to Section 3(1)A of the Land Acquisition Act 5801. The Commissioner of State Lands was also allowed to enter the lands to take surveys and do studies. The then president of Trinidad and Tobago then published an order later in September 2019, just before sitting down to meet with the former Prime Minister to discuss the removal or withdrawal of a merit list and then the collapse of the Commissioner of Police and so on, around that same time, authorizing the Commissioner of State Lands without waiting for the formal vesting of the land in the state under Section 5 to take possession of the land and apply it for any purpose connected with the use to which it is intended to be put on acquisition pursuant to Section 4.1 of the Land Acquisition Act, Chapter 5801. This included construction of the ANR International Airport. This allowed the affected residents 6 months from the service of this notice to vacate their land. If that is not oppressive, if that is not disrespectful, if that is not tyrannical, I know not what is. So save me the sanctimonious nonsense about the PNM in Tobago from 2001 to 2021, where money went through Tobago like a dose of salt, over $23 billion and nothing to show for it, overruns on every single project, but people disrespected. Your 15-0 was coming, it was bought, it was purchased, and it was delivered. This would have followed with valuations of each parcel of land, negotiation with each landowner, and a settlement on a price. In terms of the valuation, NIDCO claimed that the owner of the land would have obtained a valuation report for their land, which was their claim for compensation. The owners would have been encouraged to use a valuator registered with the Institute of Surveyors of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. President. The state would have had then to pay the cost of the owner's valuator, and the valuator would quantify the owner's claim under the recognized heads of the claim. The owner would then submit this claim to the body approved to do so, which was ACQ and Associates at that time. In terms of the negotiation, NIDCO claimed that the state would have undertaken independent valuations The owner and the state then entered into negotiations with ACQ, and before agreement, the owner was able to make a claim for an advance payment up to 80% of the state's value.
Mr. President, 46-1, please.
No,
These,
no, yeah. 46-1, I overrule. Continue, please.
Listen carefully, you may learn something. Instead of misleading the Senate by saying you was a PNM 2001 to 2017, you were not. So you didn't know what they did. You're a lifetime member now, so you go retroactive. I don't understand that. But this is something confusing. You're going retroactive PNM? But that is excellent. That's brilliant. You're amazing. Yeah. You really suit the PNM. That is true. Okay, don't disturb me now. I was born PNM, but I will never die PNM. I realize how evil PNM is. I didn't choose PNM. I come out PNM. That was in Pampas. Yes, but when I learned that it's wrong and it's evil and it's wicked, I burned my card never to return. You choose that. You was PDP and you choose. Don't compare that. Please, don't disturb me. This is important. In terms of the negotiation, Mr. President, I'm glad that you are paying attention, because you may want to understand the relationship that Tobago has had with PNM. Imagine Tobagonian spit out a Tobagonian 15-0. That don't happen unless something is drastically wrong with that human being. In terms of the negotiation, NIDCO claimed that the state would have undertaken independent valuations. The owner and the state then entered into negotiations with ACQ, and before agreement, the owner was able to make a claim for advance payment of up to 80% of the state's value. The ACQ then submitted settlements to the state for approval. In terms of settlement, NIDCO claimed that the state approved compensation and the owner would have had to be paid. The owner would then vacate the property. The president would have then declared that the land is required for public purposes by an order in January 2023, pursuant to Section 5.1 of the Land Acquisition Act, Chapter 5801. This formally vested the land surrounding the ANR Robinson International Airport in the state. That was in the PNM, who was in charge of the state. As a result of the ANR Robinson project, Crown Point residents were displaced. The Land Acquisition Order 2025 seeks to provide land for the establishment of a housing settlement and expansion of villages to correct the wrongs, to correct the disrespect, to correct the oppression of the tyrannical PNM. The previous administration took no steps, Mr. President, to provide alternative housing or housing opportunities for those displaced by the ANR Robinson International Airport construction. Who dead, who homeless. Go your way, that is PNM. That's why you get 15-0. It was not a secret. I didn't have a crystal ball, but I know when people are fed up, and the people across Trinidad and Tobago are fed up of the PNM. They don't know who's their leader, they don't know where they're going, they don't know how to do it, and that's why they will remain over there. Compensation is not enough. People were displaced from family homes, nurtured communities, and had a way of life that's in the established community. The Land Acquisition Order 2025, once approved here today, would finally provide a reasonable housing and community alternative after years of being displaced without any due consideration from the previous PNM government. Neither the Prime Minister or the PNM Prime Minister or NIDCO spoke of or mentioned relocation of displaced homes. As a result, the process has been fraught with legal action, compounding the clear and apparent lack of consideration for the people of Tobago affected. The Land Acquisition Order before the Upper House today represents true leadership, true respect, equality, equity, and upholds the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. That is what the member for Siparia rules by. She rules with fairness and love for across the Trinidad and Tobago, and will not obfuscate or shirk her duty, because the PNM I have 15 reasons, but I will save all. I will use that for doubles and coffee. 15 reasons why you got 15-0, including the dishonesty that was stated here today, including the disrespect of a chief secretary by a former prime minister in a public event, including opening an airport that they have no gas for the plane in order to mama guide people. That is the PNM, and that's why y'all are over there. So with this, we are now saying to Tobago, the United National Congress hears you, we see you, we love you, and you are our equal partners in governance moving forward. Thank you, Mr. President.